I've been lurking here a while, but never thought I'd be posting my own relationship disaster. My name's Jack, and my wife, Lisa, and I have been together for almost 10 years. We met back in college, hit off immediately, and before long, we were the couple everyone else wanted to be. Or at least, that's what I thought. Looking back, I realized there were cracks forming in our relationship that I just didn't see, or maybe I didn't want to see. For the last couple of months, Lisa's been acting different. She was suddenly working late all the time, and her phone had basically become a part of her hand. When I'd ask about it, she'd shrug it off, saying she was just busy with work and that I was paranoid. I'll admit, I felt a little crazy bringing it up because I wanted to believe her. I trusted her. After a decade together, I thought we were solid. We were even talking about starting a family soon, something I'd always dreamed about. But Lisa, she started slipping. I'd catch her texting with this sly little smile, laughing at her screen, then quickly hiding it when she saw me looking. It felt like she was turning into a stranger right before my eyes. But the biggest red flag? She just stopped caring about me, almost overnight. The affection, the little things she used to do, all just disappeared. She acted like I was some roommate she had to put up with, rather than her husband of 10 years. Then came the bombshell. Jack, I think I want a divorce. She didn't even try to be gentle about it. Just threw it out there one night, out of nowhere. After Lisa dropped the D word on me, I was reeling. Divorce? That was the last thing I expected. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't stop racing with questions. Why was she so cold? What had I done to make her want to throw everything away? But deep down, I felt there was something she wasn't telling me. The next morning, she left for work early. I sat there alone in our empty kitchen, and the silence felt deafening. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong, so I did something I'd never done in all our years together. I checked her laptop, which she'd left open on the table. Part of me felt guilty, but another part of me needed answers. And there it was. Her email was open, and right at the top, I saw a message thread between her and someone named Chris. My heart dropped. I hesitated, my hands shaking, before I clicked it. I wasn't prepared for what I found. The messages were filled with inside jokes, late-night plans, and photos. They talked about weekends away, restaurants I'd never heard of, and places she'd told me she'd been for work. One line stood out, a message from her that read, "I can't wait to be with you without sneaking around." My stomach twisted. This wasn't some harmless fling. This was a full-blown affair. I scrolled further down, and that's when I found their plan. They'd been scheming this for months. Lisa was lining up our finances, working out a way to leave me high and dry. She wanted to keep the house, our savings, everything. She didn't just want out. She wanted to leave me with nothing. I felt numb, sick, and furious all at once. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to catch her off guard. I needed a plan to make sure she didn't just walk all over me like some doormat. I waited until that evening. Lisa came home late, as usual, and didn't even look at me. She walked right past me, texting on her phone with that same smug smile she'd been flashing for weeks. I felt a surge of anger, but forced myself to stay calm. I needed her to confess, to admit what she'd done without realizing I already knew everything. "Hey, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." She barely glanced up. "About what, Jack?" "I told you, I'm done with this. I want a divorce." The way she said it, so cold, so detached, it was like she'd already written me off. "Why?" I asked. "Is it me? Is it something I did?" I wanted to see if she'd lie to my face. I wanted to know just how far she'd go to protect her secret. She sighed, rolling her eyes as if this conversation was an inconvenience. "It's just we've grown apart. You're not the same man I fell in love with, Jack. I need something more." Her words stung, but her tone was worse. She was acting like I was the one who'd somehow failed her. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "More? You mean like Chris?" Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked truly shocked. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was caught, and she knew it. "Don't act surprised, Lisa. I saw the emails. I know everything," I said, the bitterness seeping into my voice. I know about the weekends, the dinners, all of it. You've been planning to leave me for him, haven't you?" She hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she searched for a way out. Then, in a voice dripping with defiance, she said, "Fine. Yes, Jack, I'm seeing Chris. And you know what? He gives me things you never could. Attention, excitement, passion. I deserve that. I deserve to be happy." Her words were like a slap in the face. She was actually blaming me for her betrayal, as if her infidelity was somehow justified by my supposed shortcomings. The room went silent. Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt my chest tighten, like someone was squeezing the air out of me. 10 years of marriage, of shared memories, of dreams and plans for a future, crushed in a single conversation. And what hurt the most wasn't even her affair. It was the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger, or worse, an obstacle she had to push aside to get to her happiness. For a moment, I couldn't even find the words. I was overwhelmed with emotions I couldn't control. Anger, betrayal, sadness, humiliation. I could feel tears threatening to come, but I pushed them back. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. After everything we've been through, after everything we've built together, this is how you repay me? My voice was barely more than a whisper, but I could see that she felt my words. She scoffed, crossing her arms. "Don't make this a big drama, Jack. People change. Relationships end. It happens. People change. Relationships end." Just like that. Like I was some footnote in her life, a phase she'd outgrown. I couldn't believe the woman standing in front of me was the same one I'd shared my life with for a decade. It was like she'd become someone else, a stranger who'd taken everything we'd built and tossed it aside. In that moment, a sense of clarity washed over me. I realized that she was never going to feel guilty, never going to apologize, never going to admit she was wrong. She'd already rewritten the story in her mind, made herself the hero and me the villain who'd held her back. I felt a bitter sort of calm settle over me. I was done begging, done trying to understand. If she wanted out, fine, but I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. She wanted to be with Chris? She could have him, but I'd make sure she'd regret it. As I lay awake that night, I felt a strange sort of calm. The shock was fading, replaced by a cold, calculating determination. She thought she could just walk all over me, take everything we built together, and run off into the sunset with Chris? Not a chance. If she wanted to play dirty, I could play that game too. The next morning, I went through every financial document, every joint account, every piece of property we owned. I started moving things around subtly, making sure I wouldn't end up broke and humiliated. I also reached out to a good lawyer friend, someone who specialized in high-conflict divorces. He gave me advice on how to protect myself legally and financially, making sure Lisa wouldn't get a single penny more than she deserved. Over the next few days, I started making some adjustments to our finances. I funneled a few funds into a separate account, untouchable by her. I made sure the house title had a few complications attached to it. Nothing illegal, just enough to ensure that if she wanted a divorce, she'd have to fight tooth and nail for every scrap. And all the while, I kept my cool, didn't let on that anything had changed. Lisa, on the other hand, was acting like a woman who'd already checked out. She was barely around, and when she treated me with nothing but disdain. But I didn't care anymore. I let her believe she was in control, let her think I was just passively accepting her decision. Little did she know I was about to turn the tables. I found myself actually looking forward to it, almost with a twisted sense of satisfaction. She thought she could betray me and walk away unscathed. She had no idea what was coming. The woman I'd once loved was gone, replaced by someone who'd do anything to hurt me. So I decided to give her exactly what she wanted, a divorce. Only it would be on my terms, not hers. A few days later, I brought it up casually over breakfast. I figured she'd think she was winning if I sounded resigned, like I was giving in. "So, about this divorce you want," I said, stirring my coffee like it was just another Monday morning. "If that's what you really want, I won't stand in your way. Let's get this over with." Her face lit up, like she'd been waiting for me to finally surrender. I'm glad you're finally seeing reason, Jack. It'll be better for both of us. She didn't waste any time either. That same afternoon, she had her lawyer reach out to me with a list of demands. Demands. She wanted the house, half of our savings, and even some of my retirement fund. It was clear she intended to strip me down to nothing so she and Chris could live comfortably at my expense. It was laughable, really, but I didn't react. I kept playing along, let her think she was pulling the strings. In the meantime, I quietly gathered evidence. I saved screenshots of her messages with Chris, documented her behavior, and recorded conversations where she outright admitted to the affair and her plans to start fresh with him. My lawyer assured me that all of this would help in court, painting a clear picture of who was truly at fault. Lisa seemed to be reveling in her freedom, spending more nights away and coming home later and later. She even started bringing Chris around when she thought I wasn't home. The audacity was stunning, but I let her think she was invincible, oblivious to the fact that every step she took was tightening the noose she didn't even realize I was holding. It was only a matter of time now. I was setting up the pieces, and soon, everything would fall into place. She thought she'd be walking away with a cushy future, but little did she know, I was about to pull the rug right out from under her. Once everything was in place, I decided it was time to put my plan into action. I asked Lisa to sit down with me one evening, pretending I wanted to finalize some details before the divorce. She looked smug, confident, almost gleeful, thinking she was about to walk away with everything. Little did she know I had a different outcome in mind. So I've talked to my lawyer, and we've agreed to all your terms. I began, watching her expression brighten, as if she'd just won the lottery. You'll get the house, half of our savings, and everything else you asked for. I paused, letting her bask in her so-called victory for a moment. But I think you should know about a few things before you sign. She narrowed her eyes, clearly caught off guard. What do you mean? She asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but failing miserably. I slid a folder across the table, filled with printouts of her messages with Chris, receipts for their little rendezvous, and screenshots of her admissions to the affair. Her face drained of color as she opened it, flipping through each piece of evidence. Her confident smile crumbled, replaced by a look of pure panic. You see, Lisa, I continued, my voice calm and steady. In this state, adultery has a huge impact on divorce settlements. All that money you wanted, the house, you're not entitled to any of it. In fact, with all this evidence, I could push for an at-fault divorce. You get nothing. Not a dime. She stammered, at a loss for words. Jack, I didn't mean for it to be like this. Can't we just work something out? We've been together for so long. I almost laughed at the irony. Now she wanted to work things out. Now, after she'd treated me like dirt, flaunted her affair, and tried to take everything I had? Funny, Lisa, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. You were ready to throw it all away when you thought you had the upper hand. But now that you're seeing what you stand to lose, suddenly you want to work things out? Sorry, but I'm done being your fool. Her expression changed from panic to anger, her true colors showing. You think you could do this to me? After everything I've put up with? You're pathetic, Jack. You were always too weak, too boring. I cut her off, standing up. Keep talking, Lisa. None of it matters anymore. We're done here. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving her stunned, humiliated, and fully aware of the trap she'd walked into. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders as I closed the door behind me, finally taking back control of my life. After that confrontation, I could tell Lisa was spiraling. She tried calling me multiple times, leaving voicemails that swung from apologetic to furious, back and forth like a pendulum. 1 minute, she'd be begging for a second chance. The next, she'd be cursing me, saying I was ruining her life. I didn't respond. I'd already given her more than enough of my time, energy, and patience. But the real moment of satisfaction came when she realized just how much she'd lost. With the evidence I provided, my lawyer was able to secure an ironclad settlement. The judge took one look at the documentation of her affair, her financial scheming, and her obvious lack of remorse, and awarded me nearly everything. The house, the savings, Even her car, she walked away with practically nothing. She couldn't believe it. She actually had the nerve to approach me after the hearing, furious. "This isn't fair, Jack," she hissed, barely keeping her voice down. "I built this life with you. You can't just take it all away." I looked her dead in the eye and replied, "I didn't take anything, Lisa. You gave it away the moment you decided to betray me." I felt a kind of calmness that I hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, I saw her for who she truly was, and I realized I had been blind to it for years. This wasn't someone who valued me or our life together. This was someone who only cared about herself. She stormed off, her face twisted in anger. Word got around about what happened. Our friends, her family, even some of her co-workers knew the truth. She lost Chris too, by the way. I heard through the grapevine that once he realized she wasn't going to get any financial windfall from the divorce, he bailed on her. Apparently, true love only went so far when there was no money in it. I won't lie and say I didn't feel a certain dark satisfaction in watching her life fall apart. She'd thought she could use me, manipulate me, leave me with nothing. But in the end, she was the one who ended up alone, with nothing but her own betrayal to keep her company. In the weeks that followed, I started to feel free. It was like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. For so long, I tried to be the perfect husband, the one who would always support her, be there for her, and make sure she was happy. And for what? To be tossed aside, betrayed, and humiliated? It hurt, sure. I won't pretend that I didn't have my moments of sadness, wondering if I could have done something differently. But in the end, I realized that none of this was on me. This was her choice, her selfishness, her betrayal. As I slowly rebuilt my life, I found myself focusing on things I'd neglected during our marriage. I reconnected with friends, picked up old hobbies, and even started traveling a bit. The things I used to think I needed her for, I learned to enjoy on my own, and each day, I felt a little more whole, a little more like myself again. Looking back, I see now how much of myself I'd sacrificed in that relationship. I'd given up my dreams, my plans, my happiness, all in the name of keeping her satisfied. But the truth is, some people will never be satisfied, no matter how much you give them. They'll always be searching for something better, never realizing that happiness isn't something you find outside of yourself. So if I can offer any advice to others who might be going through something similar, it would be this: trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore it. And don't let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. Love should be a partnership, not a one-way street where one person gives and the other just takes. And if someone disrespects you, betrays you, or treats you like you're disposable, don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes, losing someone who doesn't value you is the best thing that can happen. As for Lisa, last I heard, she's bouncing between different places, struggling to keep up. She's lost her friends, her true love, Chris, and the life she thought she was entitled to. Meanwhile, I've moved on, rebuilt my life, and found peace I hadn't known in years. Sometimes, life is a funny way of giving people exactly what they deserve.